Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1224B, and today's date is March 9th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Time is Running Out, Systems Are in Place, and the World is About to Get Very Chaotic. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, we heard a lot from Trump about draining the swamp, getting rid of those government officials that are corrupt and whatnot. Well, it looks like it's going to be very difficult to do this. I think we're going to need to do this in a huge clean sweep, maybe after the economy collapses and we're rebuilding. But at this point, when we look at what is going on here, it is going to be very difficult to drain the swamp. Now, the financial sector threw $2 billion at Congress during the election. That's over $3.7 million per sitting member of Congress, according to a report released today by the Americans for Financial Reform. Now, the $2 billion tab fell into two categories: campaign contributions by companies, trade associations, and individuals associated with the financial sector. The financial sector is by far the largest source of campaign contributions to federal candidates and parties, and the third largest spender on lobbying. Now, the report explains, based on data by the Center for Responsive Politics, which tracks campaign contributions reported to the Federal Elections Commission and lobbying expenditures reported to the Senate Office of Public Records. Now, who are the top performers, the financial institutions that gave the most? Who was number one? Was it Goldman Sachs? Was it Wells Fargo? Was it Bank of America? No. It was the National Association of Realtors, NAR. Unbelievable. What we're seeing today is a huge bubble in the real estate market, and they were the number one. Very interesting, because they were trying to get the government to inflate the housing market in all different ways by dominating the mortgage industry, including guarantees and mortgage-backed securities, subsidizing mortgage rates, and the National Association of Realtors gave $118 million. Renaissance Technologies gave $53 million. American Bankers Association, $25 million. So who were the top 5 recipients in the Senate? Senator Marco Rubio received $8.6 million. Senator Ted Cruz, $5.4 million. Senator Charles Schumer, $5.3 million. And here are the top 5 recipients in the House. Paul Ryan, $5.7 million. Kevin McCarthy, $3.3 million. Patrick Murphy, $2.2 million. These individuals are bought and paid for. And it's going to be very difficult to drain the swamp. We need a clean sweep. And we need a law that says these individuals cannot take any funds from any corporation, from any lobbyist group. Now you can see how they become very wealthy while they're spending their time in public office. Now, looking at the new health care, which is very similar to Obamacare, and we can see right now, this is one area where I do not agree with Trump. I do not agree with this whatsoever. And neither does Rand Paul. He broke it down. And he's saying that there's still subsidies for people to buy insurance. In the Paul Ryan bill, they keep the subsidies. They just call them refundable tax credits. And what we're seeing is that the insurance is actually going to get more expensive than the subsidies we have under Obamacare. This isn't you getting your own money back. This is you getting somebody else's money. So, for example, like a family that makes $30,000 a year could actually get $14,000 that they didn't pay. Let's say they paid zero in income tax. They could get $14,000 back. One, we don't have the money. It's a new entitlement program. And two, if you get $14,000 back, Do you think the insurance company is ever going to sell insurance for less than $14,000? So that doesn't allow insurance rates to fall, and it sets up a new entitlement. The second thing that Paul Ryan's Obamacare Light, that's what they're calling it, what it does is they keep the Obamacare taxes, all of them, for a year. And then after a year, they keep the Cadillac tax forever. That's the tax on if you have really good insurance. The third thing they do is they keep the individual mandate. It seems like every Republican says they were against the individual mandate. That's if you didn't buy insurance, you had to pay a penalty to the government or a tax. Now, Paul Ryan's plan just changes the wording around and changes who you actually have to pay. And if you have to pay a penalty or tax, you're going to have to pay it to the insurance company. So if you don't want their product, you have to pay them anyhow. Now, that's still a mandate that isn't consistent with those of us who want less government involvement. And if this healthcare package is so great, why do you need to force people into it? Because the insurance companies cannot operate any other way. They need everyone in. Nothing's changed. The Republican, the Democrat Party, it's all the same. They're all playing the same exact game. There's no difference whatsoever. And it's completely obvious. This health plan cannot pass whatsoever. It is not a benefit to the people. Now, we continually hear how Trump, Sessions, parts of Trump's administration where they had contact with Russia and how they were dealing with Russia, and we can see the establishment, the deep state, they were trying to make all these connections that just didn't exist. But what's very interesting about all of this, Russia's largest bank, Sberbank, has confirmed that it hired the consultancy of Tony Podesta, the elder brother of John Podesta, who chaired Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, for lobbying its interest in the United States and proactively seeking the removal of various Obama-era sanctions. So Podesta, founder and chairman of the Podesta Group, is listed as a key lobbyist on behalf of Sberbank. I mean, Russia, this bank, paid his firm $24 million in fees in 2016. So when we start to look around and we start to see what is going on here, we see that Trump, at this point, there is absolutely no proof whatsoever, and we're seeing on the other side, they were dealing with Russia one way or another, where there was certain connections, which I find very interesting. Now, Trump's EPA chief, Scott Pruitt, says that carbon dioxide is not a primary contributor to global warming. He also called the Paris Agreement an international accord aimed at mitigating the impacts of climate change. He says it's a bad deal. He said it puts the United States on a different playing field than developing countries like China and India. He goes, I happen to think the Paris Accord, the Paris Treaty, or the Paris Agreement, if you will, should have been treated as a treaty, should have gone through the Senate confirmation. But it didn't. It was completely bypassed. And that was done on purpose. We see at this point, even with no border wall, just by implementing different executive orders, telling the Border Patrols to do their job, illegal border crossings are down by 40% already in the first month. So U.S. Customs and Border Patrol reported that a number of illegal border crossings dropped from 31,578 to 18,762. And that's just by letting them do their job. Now, if you give them more surveillance equipment, add more Border Patrol agents, I don't know if we need to spend all this money on a wall. I think we can protect the borders by just doing the job. I mean, just by doing this, he cut this almost in half already. So it can be done. Now, Kim.com is out there. He is saying that Trump is in danger. And we know that Robert Steele was out there saying that, yes, Trump is in danger. I mean, Trump hung up the Andrew Jackson portrait, which tells you that the central bankers are probably going to take a pot shot at him, just like they did Andrew Jackson. The White House leaks, he says, are coming from a rogue group within the CIA. They want to stop the Trump presidency. This is not speculation. The rogue group of Obama loyalists at CIA used powerful cyber warfare tools illegally to spy on Trump and fabricated Russian narrative, which we know this is true because the CIA leaks. And all of that was in there. We know that they were spying on the people. They were spying on pretty much everybody. They were compiling binaries and creating malware, leaving breadcrumbs so everyone would think it's a different country that is actually doing the cyber attack. And something else was in the documentation. Buried among thousands of covert CIA documents, which was released by WikiLeaks, there were a list of Japanese emojis used without any explanation by spy agency snoops, begging the question, is this a secret code they used? Now, many of the symbols in the Japanese-style faces show popular emoticons created by the keyboard strokes. And you can see them on the x22report.com, or if you're on YouTube, you can see them there. Now, again, we don't know what they exactly mean, but it's very interesting that they included them. So it looks like this must have been some type of signal when maybe they were talking to each other or something else. We just don't know at this point. Now, the CIA issued a statement on the WikiLeaks hack. The CIA's Dean Boyd, director at the Office of Public Affairs, issued a statement in response to what WikiLeaks has dubbed the biggest publication of confidential CIA material in history. And they've only released like 1% already. And I'm sure there's a lot more in there on what the CIA has been doing. Now, the CIA does not deny that the documents are authentic. It defends itself by saying that its mission is to aggressively collect foreign intelligence overseas to protect America from terrorists. Well, they haven't tracked down one terrorist yet. And why do they have to spy on all Americans? Why do they have to take every single device and violate our rights? They weren't looking for terrorists. They were never looking for terrorists. I mean, they have all this spying apparatus. They couldn't stop the Boston bombing. We know that was a false flag. They couldn't stop the San Bernardino shooting. They couldn't stop anything. Because that's not what they were really doing. This is a cover story. This is their excuse. And of course they said, well, the CIA is legally prohibited from conducting electronic surveillance. You mean like the NSA? When James Clapper was in front of Congress and he was asked at point blank, does the NSA spy on the American people? And he lied to the people and said, absolutely not, we do not spy on the American people. And then later, he says, okay, I admit it, we spy on the American people. So why would we believe the CIA at this point? We know they're lying. We know what the documentation says. That they're spying on every single person. Blackmailing who they want. Killing who they need to kill. And I'm sure as more of the documentation is released and more people go through it, we're going to find a lot more out there. Now, we see that there was this retired Russian colonel, and he's warning Trump that Russia is seeding the U.S. shoreline with nuclear mole missiles. Now, this is completely BS. They're not lining the shores of the United States. This is to scare everyone and to keep that scary enemy alive, just like they're doing with North Korea, like they're doing with China. And they're trying to convince everyone that this is what Russia is doing right now, which we know is completely fake, phony, and false. We see the U.S. is stepping up the commando deployment in Yemen. the Pentagon has quietly ordered fresh deployments of special operation troops into this area. And this move signals that the U.S., well, they're becoming more aggressive in this area because the deep state, the central bankers, they want this area back. And we can see right now more and more troops are moving into the Middle East. It looks like U.S. is preparing to send 1,000 new forces into Kuwait to be deployed to Syria and Iraq. Now the question is, were they invited into Syria? Because we're really building up a huge force in Syria at this point. And right now, the Syrian government is not working with the United States government central bankers. They're not working with Russia at all. They were not invited into Syria. So, on all accounts, this is an invasion because the Syrian government did not invite them in. And we can see from the Central Command Chief, General Joseph Votel, when he was in front of Congress, he stated the following: "We were not invited in. The U.S. sent Marines into Syria without the request or without the permission of the Syrian government. We are looking at that as an extension of the authority to operate from Iraq." What does that have to do with Syria? I mean, they're using the 2001 Go After Al-Qaeda law. I mean, this is a separate country, and they do not have the permission to be in Syria. The United States government central bankers right now are invading a country. They're not working with Russia. They're not working with Syria. This can really blow up in their faces. Now, is Russia going to do anything? They know that this would blow up and it would start World War III right off the bat. But again, when we look at this, this is completely against international law. Because if this happened here in the United States, where Syria was sending troops in to fight terrorism, well, guess what? That would be looked at as an invasion. Now, Russia is out there. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov, and he rejected the information that Moscow would allow Israel to fight Hezbollah in Syrian airspace. And Russia's saying, well, this has nothing to do with reality. We've never discussed this. We are not giving them permission to enter Syria. And we can see right now, it looks like Israel might try something in Syria. Now, other times Israel has flown in there. They have fired missiles. But we know right now that Russia and Syria, they have the S-300, the S-400 missile system implemented inside of Syria. And, I mean, if it's operational at the point in time when any other plane comes into the airspace, they could be shot down. Now, is this something they might want? Maybe to start some type of international war. We don't know. But what we're seeing right now is that things are really heating up in the Middle East. And we know that the central bankers, the deep state, they are pushing their agenda to remove Assad. That has not gone away. And what we're seeing right now is chaos has started. We have the CIA leaks. We have the troops entering the Middle East. We have the North Korea issue with nuclear weapons, with the THAAD missile system being brought into South Korea and tensions being built up there. We have the debt ceiling coming up on March 15th. I mean, everything is chaotic at this point. And as we move forward through the spring, as we move forward into the summer, and if this debt ceiling is not raised, we are going to see a system that will completely break down. And as the system breaks down, the system is going to crash. And as the system crashes, well, it's going to be horrific. And what we're seeing right now is that when the system comes down, well, currency, the credit markets, everything that we know will change. And when we look at the situation and we look at what will change, we see, well, all the programs from the government, the food stamps, the welfare, the people who are employed by the government, they're going to be a lot of work. As the government moves forward into the summer and they spend all the cash they have, well, government is going to freeze up, which means the manipulation into the market, the manipulation everywhere is going to start to freeze up. The credit markets are then going to freeze up. And the banks will then go on holiday, where they will attempt to do a bail-in. I mean, this is going to be a complete disaster. And the chaos is just started. And it's going to get worse as we move throughout this year. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.